Pekin Community High School District 303 Board of Education regular meeting is now in session. Would everyone please rise as we join in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Today is Monday, January 25th, 2016. Having a little trouble keeping up with that 2016. I call this meeting to order, and I would ask that Mr. White call the roll, please.
Allison Greedy.
Here.
Vera.
Here.
Hill.
Here.
Boheimer.
Here.
Huey.
Here.
Wrigley.
Here.
Howard.
Here. We do have the necessary quorum, and we'll move ahead with the agenda. The next item being approval of minutes. Those minutes being the Labor Management Relations Committee meeting of April the 1st, 2015, Student Achievement Committee meeting of November 19th, 2015, Operations and Maintenance Committee meeting of December 14, 2015, the regular board meeting of December 14th, 2015, the closed session of the regular board meeting of December 14th, 2015, and the special closed board meeting of January 11th, 2016.
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Hoheimer. We have a second.
Second.
Is that QB?
It was.
It was close. Thank you. Motion by Mrs. Hoheimer, second by Mr. Barra to approve the minutes as presented. Questions, comments, or discussion? Hearing none, Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Boheimer.
Aye.
Vera. Aye. Allison Greedy.
Aye.
Hill.
Aye.
Huey.
Aye.
Wrigley. Aye. Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Minutes approved as presented. Moving along, we come to communications, public comments, and participation. And as is our tradition, we'll start our board applause. And tonight, I'll start on the end with Mr. Huey.
Okay, I'd like to praise the culinary arts students and their instructor for doing something that is not in their normal course of what they do in the class, but serves Pekin High School very well. And that is the fact that in the coming week, they are going to be hosting lunch for the David Tevin Leadership Academy. That's for breakfast and a tour of CTE, and a Rotary lunch and tour of CTE, and have hosted or will be hosting Kiwanis. So they're serving not just good food, but as a very good PR arm for Pekin Community High School.
Thank you, Mr. Huey. They make great ambassadors. Mr. Wrigley.
Nothing for me this month.
Thank you, Mr. Wrigley. How about Mr. Hill?
I'd like to congratulate the speech team on their winning of the conference tournament on January 19th in Metamora by defeating Washington 108-64. Of the 14 individual events, Pekin had 8 champions and 4 runners-ups, and this makes Pekin's 10th consecutive conference championship. So congratulations again to the speech team on an outstanding season.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. How about Mrs. Hoheimer?
I'm just looking forward to Dragon Pride.
You know what? I do too. Thank you. Mr. Alessandrini.
This is more information for the board. I received a call this week from Zach Messersmith with the Illinois Association of School Boards. They have begun work on our resolution that was passed by the Delegate Assembly on the sale of student constructed remodeled homes. So they're proceeding with that, and they will be back in contact with us when they have a sponsor, which either would be Senator Kaler or Representative Mike Eunice, or both of them.
Thank you, Mr. Alessandrini, not only for that update, but also for getting it where it is, and your help in doing that. How about you, Mr. Barra?
I'd like to remind or inform everyone that the Pekin JROTC group will be performing tomorrow night at 5 o'clock in the Custer Stout Gym. It is a postponement, I suppose, of a previous meet that they were going to have. So public is invited. It's going to be the last time that this group of seniors will be performing on their home field, if you will.
Thank you, Mr. Bear, for that information, and you give me a perfect segue into something I want to remind the board of, and that is we do have a special board meeting tomorrow at 5 o'clock. So that would preclude us from going, and I hate that, but if we all show up and take care of our business, that's a good thing.
That's right.
Thank you, Mr. Bear.
Absolutely.
I'd like to direct my board of applause this evening to Mr. Stefan and Ms. Hinderleiter and everyone who's been involved in the process of migrating email to Google, which my old brain has trouble comprehending in the first place. From what I can see, it was a difficult, time-consuming, and gargantuan task, and I just wanted to know that their efforts are appreciated. Thank you all for your board applauses. And now, Dr. Owens has one.
I asked Mr. Howard if I could speak on behalf of the administration and the teachers to actually give a board applause to a board member, and that board member is Mr. Hill. And our board applause goes to him because of the work that he's done on a regional grant through Skills USA and Morton Community Bank that actually will donate money, and some of that money will come back to our own Skills USA program that is starting this year. So our applause goes to you, to the work that you've done on behalf of, I know the organization, but that will benefit Pekin High. So thank you.
Well deserved. Mr. Hill is a busy fellow. Now, one of the highlights of this process is Sarah McKenzie.
Hello. Well, student council's been pretty busy lately. We started meeting with our second semester representatives and divided them up into their committees, so they've started work. We have Valentine's Day Spirit Week, which they've decided what the themes will be for those days and what they're going to do with the booths at lunch. So they've been doing that. Library Family Fun, which is where students from student council go to the elementary schools and act out stories for them. And this year they're doing Yertle the Turtle, so that'll be fun. Dragon Spotlight has started, and next week they'll be having auditions, so that'll probably be great again. And then probably the thing I'm most excited about is our what used to be MORP committee. As you know, MORP is our Blacklight informal dance, and a couple of seniors and myself on exec board felt like it wasn't really being received as well as it used to. So we proposed the idea to make it like a vice versa or turnabout dance, and so that's what we're doing this year. So we're gonna have something a little different and see how that goes over and decide later what they'll do in the future. But we're really excited to see how that goes. So.
Understandably so. Back in the old days, they called that a Sadie Hawkins dance.
Yes, that's what we propose it as, but yeah.
Would that be in the Hawkins Gym?
What?
Would that be in the Hawkins Gym?
No.
Oh, that'd be a nice touch if it were.
I know. And then our theme we decided is like I guess a picnic under the stars, so it'll be like country kind of theme. So
I think you're right on target, Sarah, because those things tend to go in cycles.
yeah.
You know, and they stay popular for a while and then kind of fade away, and then, so having one to flip back and forth with, I think is a good idea.
Yeah. So
Good.
you're excited about
Excellent. Good job.
it. Thank you.
Thank you for your report tonight.
No problem.
Good to see you.
Me too.
At this point, I would ask if there's anyone in the audience tonight who'd like to speak before the board. Seeing no hands or no heads saying yes, we'll move on. Next item on the agenda would be the approval of claims.
Mr. President, I move for the payment of monthly warrants in the amount of $2,284,135.98 per summary information found on page 64. Detailed information begins on page 93 with board bills and manual checks beginning on page 136.
Thank you, Mr. Alessandrini. Do we have a second? Thank you, Mrs. Hoheimer. We have a motion by Mr. Alessandrini and a second by Mrs. Hoheimer. Do we have any questions, comments, or discussion? Hearing none, Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Alessandrini.
Aye.
Boheimer.
Aye.
Vera.
Aye.
Hill.
Aye.
Huey.
Aye.
Wrigley. Aye. Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Monthly warrants will be paid. In addition, you have information regarding bank balances on page 66, district investments on page 67, and medical care report on page 68. Moving along, we have a request for closed session regarding the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity. Also, collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees. Also, litigation when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of the particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the public body finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for the finding shall be recorded and entered into the minutes of the closed meeting. Do we have a motion for closed session?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hill, second by Mr. Wrigley, I think, to go into closed session. Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Hill.
Aye.
Wrigley.
Aye.
Allison Green.
Aye.
Sarah.
Aye.
Boheimer.
Aye.
Huey.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye, motion carries. At the conclusion of the closed session, the board will reconvene and continue with board business. Let the record indicate the board is back in open session at 7:37 p.m. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Before I proceed with the consent agenda, is there a board member who would like an item pulled for a separate vote? Hearing none, I'll be seeking a motion to recommend board approval of the consent agenda as presented, including the personnel report and pending background checks as necessary. Do we have such a... Thank you, Mrs. Hoheimer. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Huey. Motion by Mrs. Hoheimer and second by Mr. Huey to approve the consent agenda as presented. Are there questions, comments, or discussion? Hearing none, Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Boheimer.
Aye.
Huey.
Aye.
Allison Green.
Aye.
Sarah.
Aye.
Hill.
Aye.
Wrigley.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Consent agenda passed as presented. Next item, midterm graduates 2015-2016. Dr. Owens.
On page 200, you have a list of Pekin Community High School midterm grads for 2015-16. Their names are Madison Angelo, Shelby Autry, Hannah Barker, Becca Beal, Austin DeMote, Angel Fouts, Celeste Gleason, Jonathan Hamlet Ravel, Haley Hershey, Tyler Jacobson, Leah Johnson, Jacob Jones, Garrett Kesselmeyer, Aaron Logan, Adriana Mercer, Elizabeth Otis, Benjamin Percival, Autumn Peters, Jesse Peters, Roxanne Schoenblum, Whitney Smith, Christopher Thompson, Sean Tibbetts, Catherine Trotter, Shayla Watson, and Elijah James Wolf. I ask for board approval to make the names of these midterm graduates for the 15-16 school year matter of record as presented.
Motion for approval.
Thank you, Dr. Owens. And was that Mr. Wrigley?
Yes, sir.
Second.
That was Mr. Allison Green. Motion by Mr. Wrigley and second by Mr. Allison Greeny to approve the midterm graduates as presented. Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Wrigley.
Aye.
Allison Green.
Aye.
Sarah.
Aye.
Hill.
Aye.
Boheimer.
Aye.
Huey.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Midterm graduates 2015-2016 approved. Next item on the agenda is request permission to seek bids for various buildings and ground projects. Mrs. Schaefer.
Over the last several months, in the Operations and Maintenance Committee meetings, we've discussed several different projects that we would like to go out for bid for. So tonight we bring to you 3 projects that we would like to request to seek bids on. One of them being the G Building roof. This is the northeast section. You'll remember last year we did the northwest section. So this is the second part of that roof. The second project is the E-Building Hawkins Gym piping upgrade, which is the domestic and sewer piping, as well as alternate bids in that project for locker upgrades in the girls' and boys' PE locker room. And the third project is the second phase of the softball field, which would include completing the dugouts, concession press box, batting cage area, and the sewers and sidewalks to complete that project. So the request tonight would be to recommend board approval to seek bids for the various buildings and grounds projects, subject to provisions of the Prevailing Wage Act as presented.
Thank you, Mrs. Schaefer. Do we have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Alessandrini. Thank you, Mrs. Hoheimer. Motion by Mr. Alessandrini, second by Mrs. Hoheimer, for permission to seek bids for various building and ground projects as delineated. Questions, comments, or discussion? Hearing none, Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Alessandrini.
Aye.
Hoheimer.
Aye.
Rivera.
Aye.
Hill.
Aye.
Hubie.
Aye.
Ridley.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Get some good bids, Mrs. Schaefer. And now we'll move on to reports, and we'll begin with the resignations. And Mrs. Hoheimer, I'm kind of sad.
Amanda Nelms, personal assistant for the special ed department, effective January 20th.
We had, what, 4 months with zero? So we broke our string. Well, can't shoot the messenger, so you're okay.
Nothing lasts forever.
Okay. Moving on, Policy Committee, Mr. Wrigley.
The policy committee met this evening in the superintendent's office, covered a number of policies, and we will be bringing a plethora of policies for a first reading next month.
Good word, thank you, Mr. Wrigley. Operations and Maintenance, Mr. Alessandrini.
We just approved going out for the various building and grounds projects. As those bids and timelines come back, the committee will be meeting to go over that and make recommendations to the board.
Thank you, Mr. Alessandrini, good job. Then we have Labor Management Relations Committee, Dr. Owens.
We did meet in January and discuss the school calendar and came up with a few revisions that we find to be amenable, and so we'll solidify that and we will bring the school calendar before you then in February.
Thank you, Dr. Owens. How about Student Achievement Committee?
We actually did not meet this month for student achievement due to negotiations.
Thank you. How about FOIA requests?
We had 3 FOIA requests.
Oh my.
Yeah, this month we had 1 FOIA request specifically around gifted and talented and how many students we had involved in those programs and delineate those by race and other factors. That was sent off. We had a Freedom of Information Act request around our benefits, summary of benefits and coverage that was sent to us by IFT, so we responded to that. And we also had a FOIA request from someone requesting information around if we used a risk manager for our insurance and who our insurance carrier was and basically how much our different premiums for our insurance policies of the district were. So 3 not so long ones, which was okay.
Thank you, Dr. Owens. Given the hectic schedule in the district of late, I'm amazed that you got those taken care of. Thank you. How about 6-day enrollment, second semester?
You'll see on page 202, we do obviously a 6-day count every semester, and our 6-day count, as usual in our spring semester, is down. I would say the total number of students, 1934, is down a little bit more than typical. If you remember, we started the year just over 2,000 or right at 2,000. So our drop's a little bit more, but that tends to bounce back by fall again, so that's where our district enrollment lies right now.
I wonder if the fact that we have more males than females has anything to do with that Sadie Hawkins dance. How about...
Odds are in the favor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about Seneca?
Can we go back
Sure.
to, when I looked at the 6-day enrollments, I mean, you kind of report that we dropped to 1934, but we lost 62 students this year compared to 79 last year, 106, 13, 14. I mean, really, in the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, 62 that we dropped is actually
Pretty good.
is the least.
Yeah.
I mean, I know the numbers are down, but really the number that we lost overall is a lot less. I mean, you go back to 11, 12, we lost 114 students. This year, 62. So I think, for whatever reason, I think it's really a positive.
Yeah, we always hope though it bounces back back up around that 2,000. I mean, not that we're that far off of it, but we like to be a little bit right around 2,000 or a little bit over, just, especially with ADA and the things that are tied to that, but correct. Yeah.
Because we just made a matter of record of 26 students, so you take that off the 62 right away, and so really our total number from the beginning of the year to the second semester is not.
That's true.
What is that?
Any other comments? Mr. Allison, you are nothing if not a diplomat. How about Senate Bill 100?
At your seat or at your place, there is an update on Senate Bill 100, which is something that continues to be on the minds of all school administrators and school personnel, as well as people that have any dealings with student discipline in terms of the changes that Senate Bill 100 is potentially bringing us. And so this is just a summary of what we know about Senate Bill 100. Senate Bill 100, if you talk to any attorney that has anything to do with schools, they say it's a bad bill. It's one of the worst bills that was passed through, and so now it's all about interpretation of that bill and what we're going to be held to. So we as administration are continually going to updates on Senate Bill 100 as things continue to come out. Melissa and I are scheduled to go sometime in February to another update from IASA. We have Amy and Ryan out of the principal's office going to an IPA update, and then we'll come back and compare notes and interpretations and figure out how we change things. But I wanted to give you kind of what is behind Senate Bill 100 so that we are all on the same page in terms of how that's potentially going to impact how we handle suspensions and expulsions. So the bullet points are things that are going to be required, some of which we already have in place. So the first one, that Parent-Teacher Advisory Committee, we already have that. As you know, we go over a handbook every year. We do have a Parent Advisory Committee that comes in and looks over the changes that we potentially are making. We have a Dean's Discipline Committee that's made up of teachers, and so that's already something that we do. We do have to develop new policy by September 15, 2016, so all of these things that are talked about underneath here are things we're going to have to figure out how we're going to address for next school year. They ask that you have a memorandum of understanding with law enforcement in terms of how information is going to be shared and how that's going to be handled. Again, that's something we already do, having a liaison here and a contract with the Pekin Police Department. That's something that we can kind of cross off the list. One of the things that people continue to talk about is specifically how we have to deal with suspensions and expulsions. Suspensions, some of this we do now. When we suspend a student and a letter is sent home, it does explain exactly why the student is suspended. It explains how long the suspension is for. Basically, they're asking that we have to give a rationale for the duration of the suspension. And that we have to state what the specific act is for, which again we do. We also make a phone call home with all of that information in addition to a letter. One of the things that will be a change for Pekin High is that policy, we have to have a policy created that provides opportunity to make up any missed work for equivalent academic credit. That is not the case right now. Our students are allowed to make up work they miss on a suspension day for 90% credit. That was a change we instituted several years ago. Probably wasn't a very popular change, but it is part of this bill that they have the opportunity to make up work at 100%. So that'll be something we have to change with our staff. We also have to create a re-engagement policy for anyone who's suspended over 4 days, expelled, or placed in an alternative setting. So again, what that looks like is up to us, but there has to be some sort of re-engagement policy, which we have for students who are coming back to us off of an expulsion or from an alternative setting. But whether that means they have to meet with a counselor before they go to class on the day they come back, whatever that looks like, that's again something we have to create for any student who's suspended for more than 4 days. The hard part about any of this is it's going to come down to interpretation and all the determinations of our administrative staff of what is actually a threat to safety and disruption, what constitutes that, what does that mean, whose interpretation of that. Obviously from school to school is probably going to be different. And then as well as what interventions are available, we have to make on a case-by-case basis, and we have to make those for each individual student. So it's not unlike what we do now, but in terms of the tiers of support and different interventions that we have to include along the way, we're going to be beholden to some of that. Suspensions of 1 to 3 days are not really unlike what we do now, although we can only use it if a student's presence poses a threat to school safety or a disruption to other students' learning opportunities. Again, does missing Saturday school on a Saturday that results right now in an out-of-school suspension, can we say that out-of-school suspension is being given because they're a threat to school safety? Because they miss Saturday school? We might be reaching on that one a little bit. Or is it a disruption to other students' learning opportunities? Again, it's going to come down to how we interpret that, but those are the things we continually look at now with our handbook with a different viewpoint as to what that delineation is. Suspensions of 4 days, the wording's similar, except they add the word substantially disrupts instead of just disrupts. So how do you delineate between a 3-day suspension and a 4-day suspension? Well, the word substantially comes into play, but then you also have to document whether other behavioral and disciplinary interventions were attempted. So can't assign a 4-day suspension if you didn't prove that you tried to put something into place beforehand that could warrant a shorter suspension. Whether they take advantage of that or not, then it has to be documented, which again are things we do now. A lot of times we don't jump to a certain number of days suspension if there aren't things that lead up to that. Suspensions of 5 to 10 days, again, the bullet points are the same, but then it adds another tier where you have to document whether appropriate and available support services were provided for the student, or if there were none available. You also have to provide appropriate support during the suspension. So just in the case of if we have students who are on IEPs, who are out of the building for any reason for discipline, they have to have support provided, meaning instructional support, whether that means they go on homebound for the days they missed. That now has to be provided for all students who are suspended over 4 days. So they have the right to homebound tutoring, they have the right to whatever we deem appropriate support, they have the right to have. Moving on to expulsion, it isn't unlike what we do now. I think we have a lot of things in place that won't have to be changed. They obviously want to limit the number of expulsions that are given. You can read may expel student only if other appropriate and available behavioral and disciplinary interventions have been exhausted, and the student's presence in the school poses a threat to the safety of other students, staff, or the community, or substantially disrupts the operation of the school. You have to document whether behavioral or disciplinary interventions were attempted. So again, for instance, student comes to school and distributes pills to another student. That's been an automatic. You're expelled, potentially put up for expulsion from school. Okay, are we going to be able to say we tried other interventions? Probably not, because it probably hadn't happened before. So is that student now going to be put up for expulsion? I don't know. I mean, those are the things we have to work our way through. We also have to not have zero tolerance policies, which we typically do not have zero tolerance policy, but that would be an example of pretty close to a zero tolerance policy. You distribute something on campus, you're going to be recommended for expulsion. I don't think we're going to be able to be there anymore, but we'll continue to keep you updated. But then, in addition to taking action in open session, a letter will have to be drafted, which a letter is sent out of my office after an expulsion takes place, detailing why and the duration, but it's going to have to be specific as to why it's in the district's best interest, and a rationale and duration of time must be provided in writing by the board, and that will be sent in addition to board action. So those are, in a nutshell, those are the major things around suspension and expulsion. It's going to take us, a long, hard look at some of the things we do and why we do them. Obviously, we have an interest in keeping the schools safe. We have an interest in not burdening our staff with students who can't follow the rules and can't behave, but in the same time, we're also being beholden to a new rule that is going to tie our hands potentially a little bit in terms of some of the more severe disciplines that we have. We've never taken those lightly. They're always done case by case, but it's just going to be another laundry list of things we're going to have to work our way through. Obviously, the last pieces are things that we typically don't do anyway. It prohibits us to advise students to drop out. We're not usually in the business of doing that anyway. No monetary fines or fees can be used as consequences, but you can ask for restitution if they break something or destroy something, which we do right now. The other piece is we have to provide professional development to all members of the school community, to the school board, to the administration, to the deans, to the teachers, around lists of why, what are the adverse consequences of school exclusion, classroom management strategies, what are developmentally appropriate classroom strategies, all of those things. Again, which are things that we do in limited scopes, but we're going to have to take a look and see how we do that a little bit differently as well. So that's kind of a summary synopsis of what that bill entails. It's a lot. Again, if you talk to any attorney, it's going to be all about doing things either as you have or change a little until somebody pushes you on something and court cases start to get filed and then how people react to that. So
I have to say one thing. My blood is boiling about this. I would like to see Senator Lightfoot and Representative Davis co-sponsored this bill. I'd love to see them come and teach in a building. I'd love to see how they would react to some of the issues. This obviously is out of Chicago. And again, Chicago is dictating what downstate Illinois is going to do. It's not right. I think people should be able to, districts should be allowed to do what's best for the students that are in their district.
I agree.
It's not one size fits all.
I believe, Mrs. Holheimer, you're preaching to the choir, in all honesty.
I know, I'm just saying it because I'm livid.
Yeah, and we understand that too. But thank you for your comments. I think they're necessary and important. Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Dr. Owens.
No problem.
We'll move on to future agenda items. Is there a particular item a board member would like to see on a future agenda?
We can't put secession away from Chicago. Have any effect on
No,
it.
I've thought about that a lot.
We could draft a resolution, but no, that is not a request to be put on the future agenda.
You're probably not old enough to remember Forgatonia, are you?
No, sir, I'm not.
Well, it was tried about 40-some years ago by a chunk of land in central Illinois, and they named it Forgatonia, and it had a state capital and everything else. Nothing went anywhere. Moving on, we have announcements by the president. Number one is a reminder, the CIB ISB Spring Dinner Meeting will be hosted at Washington Central School, District 51, at the Central Primary School in Washington, scheduled for March the 2nd. If you have an interest in going, and it's never too early to think about it, to get it on our busy schedule, make sure that you let Mr. White know. Secondly, the ISB has scheduled a workshop for Thursday, February 4th at Morton 709 entitled Using Data to Make Decisions. If a board member has an interest in attending that meeting, please let Mr. White know, and he'll arrange it so you can attend. The next regular board meeting of the Board of Education is scheduled for Monday, 22nd of February at 6:30 p.m. in this room. But as we already know, we'll have one or two special meetings at the very least prior to that time. So it's not really fair to say that we'll be adjourned until February 22nd. At this point in the process, I have a request for closed session regarding the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity. Do I have such a motion? Thank you, Mrs. Hoheimer.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wrigley. Motion by Mrs. Hoheimer, second by Mr. Wrigley, that the board go into closed session for the reasons that I've delineated. Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Goldheimer.
Aye.
Wrigley.
Aye.
Allison Green.
Aye.
Sarah.
Aye.
Hill. Aye. Huey.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. For a point of clarification, at the completion of the closed session, no board action will be taken. So therefore, for all intents and purposes, the board is officially adjourned as of right now. Thank you all.